Hey guys, right, so in my last video I was talking about the low compression on this ZX6R motor. For anyone that's not seen the last video, I'll just quickly go over it again. So I've tested it outside the bike using this rig that I set up with a battery. The battery's not here at the moment, it's trickle charging, but anyway, so I spun the motor over and I got 100 psi on that one, 90, 90 and 75, so quite low compression. It should be at least 138, so I'm like 40 or 50 psi short on all four cylinders at least. So it could be rings or it could be valves, but what I decided to do is I decided to deal with the valve clearances, to correct the valve clearances. So what I've done, as you can see, is I've removed the camshafts using the correct procedure, which is to position the engine with the number one piston at TDC, which means that you have to have the mark here, T1.4 it says on the wheel, and it has to match the mark on the side of the crankcases there. So I did that, and I had the two camshafts with the wheel, with the hole in the wheel at the very top on both of them. So I had it positioned correctly, took the camshaft out. As you can see, I've cable tied the chain onto this pipe, which I believe is an oil pipe, I think, circulates engine oil, or it might be coolant, I'm not really sure, but anyway, cable tied it on there, got the camshaft out, removed the lifters. As you can see, I'm sort of right down to the top of the valves and the spring, what do you call it, spring guide, I can never remember the name for all these things, but so that's where I'm at now. So what I did was I got my digital micrometers, which we've got here, and started measuring the shims. And what we've got here is got two rows of tappets and shims. So the bottom ones have got the exhaust, and the top ones have got the inlet. Now, so I measured them all on the digital micrometers, and I found that the inlet ones were all around about 3 mil to 3.05, that kind of range. So 3 mil or just over 3 mil thickness, and the exhaust ones are in the range of sort of 275 to 280. Now, when I was doing the valve clearances on the motor, basically they were all tight as anything. Like the thickest, a lot of them I couldn't get a feeler blade in at all, and the thickest feeler blade I could get in, the ones that I could get one in, was like a 0002 or something like that. It's like basically the thinnest blade you can get, like the thickness of tin foil. So the clearance is basically as tight as I could get. I looked at the charts in the Haynes manual, which is, it was here somewhere, but I seem to have lost it. Okay, I don't know what I've done with my Haynes manual, but anyway, yeah. So according to my Haynes manual, with those clearances and those measurements for the shims on the inlet, I should be putting shims into the inlet which are 275 to 280, which just happens to be exactly the thickness of most of these exhaust ones. So what I've realised I could do is use the exhaust ones for the inlet, all 8 of them, and that basically saves me having to buy a full set of 16. So what I did was I called Jim Allen Motorcycles in Falkirk and spoke to a guy there who was very helpful. Asked him if you can actually do that, if you can swap exhaust shims to the inlet, and he said that you can, that a shim's a shim, there's no problem with that. So I can use those 8 from the exhaust, put them in the inlet, and that's my inlet taken care of, all of them. So that then leaves the exhaust. So I asked him to quote me for a price for shims, and he said they're £9.50 each, including VAT. Okay, so, and also they have to come from Holland, which means they're going to take about a week to get here. So I thought, well, what I could do, I had a quick Google around it, and some people were kind of talking about machining down shims to make them thinner. So what I did was I went to my local DIY store and I bought this. It's basically a Draper multi-tool, Storm Force they call it, and it's like a Dremel. Runs off the mains, and so what I've done is using this little grinding wheel, and what I've been doing is I've been putting the shim into these and just holding them up to there and just machining them on the end of that grinder. Okay, I tried using these initially, which is a dead handy tool, by the way, for all sorts of things. But what I was finding was it was just constantly just pinging out of that. So I started using these, and then what I've been doing is I've been checking them every so often, grinding them for maybe like a minute or two, and then checking them on the multimeter. Now what I've been noticing is they've actually been getting thicker when I started grinding them, and when that first happened I was like, what on earth? And then what I realised was what's happening is the heat is actually making them expand. So what I've done is, what I've been doing is I've ground one, and then I've moved on to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. I've been working my way down them and just grinding them down a little bit.